we're recording.
Yes. Well, you haven't touched your ear yet, so we can still talk to you, yeah?
No, it's recording my.
Well, welcome, Daryl and Alpa. Today we're going to be talking about education and many things that are very, very important right now. It's the first time I've met Daryl, but at Alpa we have our weekly get together and have a chat about what's going on in the world.
2 weekly now, Charlie. Unfortunately, Charlie's very busy at the moment.
It's well, I was saying to Daryl earlier, I've got five today and 5 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly exciting but draining.
Yeah.
But no, look, it's the harvest time right now, and it's super exciting.
Well, look, I always like bringing guests onto the channel, and Daryl has been a long-standing friend in this journey, in this battle on the field of Facebook and Instagram, and we've become really good friends. And Daryl's been doing some really amazing stuff, and in fact it was right at the beginning of my journey that Daryl and I became friends, because if you go on his Instagram page, he's just got some really insightful information. But he's been doing some constructive stuff behind the scenes, and that's developing his course, which has got some really amazing information. And I'll let you take it away, Daryl, because I don't want to take
just
away
before Daryl starts. We'll have the links down below for Daryl's course. So if you want to connect with Daryl, the links will be down below, so that you can connect.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I run an education platform called Empath Education. I have 3 courses. The flagship program is called the Adult course. This teaches how the brain works, how the mind works, how to manage mental and emotional well-being. It teaches emotional intelligence. It's got a module in there all about the virtual ego, how to manage your virtual ego with social media. A module on intellectual evolution, how you actually increase your intelligence and IQ by assessing your cognitive biases, stuff like that. I have another program called the meditation course, which teaches meditation without spirituality. It teaches the hardcore techniques from India, from Raja Yoga, thousands of years ago. It also has a module on binaural frequency for brainwave entrainment, which is using frequencies in headphones to calibrate the 2 hemispheres of the brain. So I'm teaching all the psychology and philosophy that underpins that. But my new course I've just designed is the Awakening course, because I found that all of my followers on Instagram had gravitated towards what I do through the Great Awakening of last year, of everything being exposed. And I sense that a lot of people are having some kind of conscious spiritual awakening. I've been through a spiritual awakening myself. I'm 5 years into it. And I've studied everything from Hinduism, Buddhism, the Vedic principles from 6,000 years ago, to the depth psychology in the past 120 years, even looking back at the 1500s, what the geniuses and alchemists were doing with this stuff. So I've compiled all of that into a 6-module course, which should help people to navigate their own spiritual or conscious awakening.
And this is so constructive at this time, because a lot of people at this moment in time are lost.
Yeah.
And they don't know what's going on. Those people that have been awake for some time and aware about what's going on, even that they're needing guidance at the moment, may need to do with timings, because everybody's in a hurry. This is a far bigger job than World War I and World War II put together. World War III is. And it's only taken a year, and we're very close to it being over and resolving the issues. And but the first stage is to wake up that something is not correct. And then once you wake up, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe Alpa. You just have to listen to what we've got to say and make your own mind up and do your own research. And when I say do your own research, I don't mean turn the television on or buy the Sunday Times. It's got nothing to do with that. It's to do with proper research, because what we're being told by mainstream media and by politicians is inaccurate, for the want of a better word. Another word is they're full of shit.
Yeah.
So do your own research. And when you've got people like Daryl here that are providing you education so that you know how to understand the different frequencies of the brain, how to understand meditation, how to understand the difference between spirituality and religion, and how to just to break down and understand what's going on. And it's very, very constructive that people like Daryl are out there helping people and guiding people, because a lot of people will move from the third dimension, which they won't even know what that means, into the fourth dimension, which basically means you don't know where you are. Because I've been there. I was there for 2.5 years when I was 23 years old. I had no idea what was right and wrong. I landed up in front of the courts. I landed up in prison because I had no idea about what was right and what was wrong. And it took me time to do this. So to have people around that are prepared to help you with this is a huge asset that I didn't have when I was 23 years old.
I think you have to go through the dark night of your soul to experience, something so profound within. And people message me, Charlie, and Daryl, and say, Alpa, we talk about going within. Look, none of us got a manual of how to do this, even in this great global awakening journey. And this has been a learning curve where we are all spiritually evolving from within, learning things every single day. We're seeing things in the media. We're trying to decipher what's going on externally as well, to make sense of everything while keeping ourselves spiritually aligned and calibrated from within, and it's going through so many different waves. So I myself personally have experienced this, Charlie, where you go through waves of emotion, and Daryl, I was speaking about it with you this morning, that every day sort of monitoring where we are in the given moment, where we are right now, and we can waver because of that anxiety. Oh no, this didn't happen by this date, or this didn't happen by that date, and we get sort of attached to these timelines, which is really crucial at this moment. Is just that we are speculating and we're deciphering the information, but the main thing is keeping the mind and internally still. And how do we do that? No, none of us got a manual, and which is why I wanted Daryl here today on the course, because he's offered something. Like, I read your course this morning and I was just to reacquaint myself with it, and there's some phenomenal, you mentioned the Vedic science, Daryl. I mean, some of the stuff that you speak about blew my mind. And it's like, coming from that background myself, I feel a bit embarrassed that I don't know. I wasn't taught growing up, being raised in the UK, not really kind of, acquainting myself with our scriptures and our Vedic science knowledge. But it's phenomenal stuff. And it's important right now to keep our head above water and maintain that sense of positivity, despite the face of adversity, despite feeling a little bit like wavered. And I get it. I've been on this journey with Charlie since like last June, and very recently I'm like, oh God, it's a year in now, and like I need to also recalibrate. So yeah, thank you, Daryl.
So could I just add to that, Alpha? The reason why I'm doing this and the reason why you guys are doing this is because we know there is a cabal, an elite cabal of people, the richest people in the world, who are controlling things and creating narratives. And I just want to explain a little bit about this. So the way the dominance hierarchy works in Western capitalist society, it's actually predicated on conscientiousness, not intelligence. So we think the most intelligent people rise to the top of bureaucracies and organizations and managerial roles, and become CEOs of corporations and stuff like that. But it isn't intelligence which predicates that, it's conscientiousness. So the difference is that intelligence is the ability to think abstractly, but conscientiousness is the ability to implement abstract ideas. Now, who are the most conscientious people? Well, to be conscientious, you need to be devoid of empathy. The reason me and you guys might not do so well managing, thousands of people in a corporation and having to sack a load of people, our heart would get in the way, right? Our heart and our empathy gets in the way. But you see, these people who lack empathy, right? They climb up through these structures to get to these roles where they can make executive decisions which affect the lives of people, and they don't feel anything. Now, who are these people? Who are the people who don't feel anything? Sociopaths and psychopaths, because the part of their brain, the amygdala, which connects to the mammalian brain in the central nervous system, isn't fully active. So they're not processing emotion how we process emotion. So if we think about this dominance hierarchy and we think about government and this elite cabal of people, well, they are conscientious, they're devoid of empathy. And their game, you know, the game they're playing is putting a lot of pressure on us. And, you know, I've known about this since about 2009, 2010, when I started learning about the Illuminati through music and through Hollywood and the rap and hip hop music industries and all of the symbolism there. And I've been, you know, just alone on this path. I watched your podcast with Ricky the other day, and he said he was the same. I was actually, you know, I've got a very similar path to him because I felt alone learning all of this stuff. And it wasn't until last year when it all started to explode, I was like, finally, it's all coming to the surface now. I'm not alone, which is why so many people gravitated towards my Instagram page, because I was sharing everything I knew, explaining everything. And it was just a relief for me for it to come out in this great awakening. But you see, there's some metaphysical principles to this. So the year of 2020 was what the Mayans described as the age of Aquarius. On December 21st, 2020, Saturn and Jupiter are aligning for a new golden age to mark a new age of consciousness. So if we look back to 2010, the Rockefeller Foundation released the Lockstep Agenda. This cabal have had this plan for a very long time. The reason why they've rolled it out in 2020 and they're starting to throw everything they've got at us is because we've entered a new age, a new conscious age where intelligence is heightening, empathy and compassion is heightening within each and every one of us. And this is astrologically predicated. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But the cabal are throwing everything they've got on us to suppress us all. And that's the reason I'm doing everything I'm doing to help people wake up and to have awareness around all this stuff.
You're absolutely bang on right. And it was not judgment, it was luck that I was working on the quantum system, which is a completely parallel universe to the New World Order's vaccination, virus vaccination, 5G, riots and alien invasion plan. And you're right, it's been going on, because I knew about it 7 years ago. I was told about it 7 years ago. It wouldn't surprise me if it was more than 10 years ago that this was planned by them. And the white paper came out 10 years ago by the Rockefellers. And this is when what we now call the White Hats, the Alliance, what have you, got together and said, right, we've got to stop this, and we've got to get somebody who is, in very simple terms, godly. Somebody that we can trust to lead us into this. And that, for whatever reason, it's got nothing to do with personalities. Donald Trump was chosen to front this up. And he was chosen along with Vladimir Putin, Modi in India, and Xi in China. And the four of them were given the task to bring down the cabal and stop what was happening. So there's been two wars going on at the same time. There's been the cabal who've been desperately trying to push out the vaccination, the virus, the 5G, and causing riots and what have you, and the alien invasion, which we're now seeing from Mexico into America, as they refer to them as aliens, illegal aliens. And people are looking up in the sky looking for other types of aliens. This was the invasion that was being talked about. This is all being managed behind the scenes. What the media are putting out is that Joe Biden is the president, and they're putting out this narrative because they're still trying to get their agenda out, and they're still pumping out. The media are part of the Illuminati. They're covering up for them. They're going with their story, and they're pushing. But we're hours, if not days, away from that all coming to an abrupt end. We're extremely. I'm under a military NDA, so I can't tell you, and I don't even know the exact timing, but I do know that the final codes have been entered. I do know that. But the exact timing, I don't know when that will be. And then the moment the switch is flicked, the Illuminati's days are over for good. When Donald Trump referred to taking the head off the beast back in April last year, that was when they had arrested all the Phoenician families, all the bloodline, and emptied the Vatican and emptied Buckingham Palace. Hang on, I've got Peter Bierhoff here. He's not supposed to be on here. Emptied Buckingham Palace and the City of London, back to the Federal Reserve into the Treasury, and shut down all of the state Federal Reserves. They were all shut down in March, April of last year.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to somebody in Georgia who said to me, Charlie, there's been absolutely nobody in there at all. There's guards there guarding it, but nobody's gone in or out of that building for a year. And yet the mainstream media have chosen to ignore that. I was lucky that I was working on the good side of the quantum financial system. I was incredibly lucky. It's been a wonderful journey for me to see what is happening in the world.
Charlie, can I ask you what's happening with Agenda 2030? What do you see happening there?
That's all part of the deep state. That's been smashed to smithereens. You're absolutely right. We're moving into a golden age. We're moving into the Great Awakening. We're moving into Jasara.
Right.
Jasara will probably kick in this week, I would think. Right. The foundations of it are already laid. The minute the switch is flicked, 2030's gone out the window, and all the agendas that the deep state, the New World Order, Prince Charles and all that lot, and George Soros, all their plans are over. They're technically already over now.
The Agenda 2030, the World Economic Forum, it's just been such a joke. They've been releasing posters that say, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Correct. This is exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, through the lockdown, through last year, you know, 22% of small and medium-sized businesses have gone bankrupt, never to recover, you know. So what happens if these businesses go bankrupt? Well, government is looking to take control of these resources and services. And I just saw the other day that some billionaires have bought out Asda, these two brothers, and they're going to introduce hairdressers and nail salons into Asda. I don't think the people are going to have that, are they?
No.
Yeah, well, it's just swallowing up small businesses.
Yep.
And just going back to the media, I mean, we're just being distracted with pathetic news with Meghan and Harry. I mean, these are all like distraction tactics at the moment, and to keep everyone distracted from what's actually going on behind the scenes, and to even like think as to what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, it is getting a bit crazy at grassroots regarding all the, you know, just for the point of censor, we don't get censored. There's so much going on with people and people fighting, and just crazy stuff going on with that. And that uncertainty is causing much more fear within people. But there is that uncertainty where, you know, where is this all going? People are asking me, Apple, what do you think? I don't know. Trump hasn't come to save the day. Like, and, you know, the media now is breadcrumbing us with all the, like, AstraZeneca, Pfizer. There's been people that are they're withdrawing the vaccines from
16 countries have suspended it now, and the media are now starting to publish this. I did predict last year that obviously we know that the media is a weapon of the government and the establishment to keep everyone spellbound, you know, so that the interests of the powerful can continue uninterrupted. But I'm seeing more and more of the mainstream media starting to report on this now, which is a brilliant thing.
Yeah,
it is. But I even noticed the media today was saying that the only reason that Europe is criticizing the vaccine is because of Brexit, and I was like, you couldn't make some of this stuff up. I mean, they'll blame anything on anything, but rather than face up to the truth. It was made very, very clear at the start of this journey that mainstream media would be the last ones to be taken down, along with Israel. And we're just seeing it all play out. And we're living, I mentioned it earlier, we're living in this sort of parallel universe where Some people are just watching mainstream media and they're not seeing anything that we're seeing at all. And what we're seeing, if you have to be in the fifth dimension to see it, you have to rise above the normal sort of third dimensional view to see what's actually going on. And I think also with your education, Daryl, you'll help people in a very simple way find out the fifth dimension, reset their moral compass, come through the fourth dimension, and so that you can see things with clarity. Meditation is a great way to connect, and a lot of people are completely oblivious to these things as to how to connect with yourself, how to understand who you are as a person. And what you're doing is incredibly constructive.
Thank you. So I teach a lot of this stuff on my Instagram, particularly what we've been talking about the elite cabal and all of their agendas. So if we look back at the 2012, the Olympics ceremony, and we look at that, you can Google these images of this massive, dark, shadowy figure with a cloak, and it looks like a demon, and there's loads of empty hospital beds. So what the elite cabal are doing, they are worshipping entities in other dimensions, which Christians call demons, what Muslims call jinns, but these are essentially entities in lower vibrational realms. Now, these Masonic societies worship these entities because these entities do things for them and construct reality in a certain way and give them energy, right? This is all considered black magic. So what they're doing using the media, they're trying to lower everyone's vibration because these entities in other dimensions feed off fear energy. And this fear energy is called loosh. Now, people experience this in sleep paralysis. If anyone's ever had sleep paralysis and you see a dark, shadowy figure and you're just afraid and vibrating in fear, these entities come from other dimensions to feed off the fear energy, which is called loosh. So the elite cabal are farming us for that loosh fear energy, because that's what their entities and deities require as an energy source. That's why they use the mainstream media to keep everyone confused and angry and fearful. It's why they do everything, essentially. And just to go on, a couple of things that happened last year with the Wayfair scandal. Wayfair, everyone was saying that the people were seeing posts that Wayfair was selling cabinets for $20,000 or a table for $15,000, and it had the name of a child. Now, I don't think that Wayfair were trafficking children. What I think was happening is that Wayfair was used to stir the pot, to just put these, advertisements up to annoy people like you and me, to get us all talking and get us all fighting, and then people would call us conspiracy theorists. And same with the 5G. When the 5G started to roll out last year, the Sun newspaper and newspapers were showing images of 5G towers being set alight, but these towers are like 30 foot up in the air, and they were saying, the headlines were saying, conspiracy theorists are burning down 5G towers. I don't think anyone's climbing 30 foot into the air to burn a tower down. I think they're doing it on purpose to cause a fight and divide to conquer, essentially, in people, in society.
Yeah. And it's this energy, this negative energy that's permeated, and it's affected so many people. What I call psychic attacks. It really can throw people off guard. And if you're not aware of it, if you don't know how to look after yourself, have spiritual hygiene, daily, have practices daily to protect yourselves, you can actually get ambushed. I mean, the air has seemed really dense in the last 4 weeks. I speak to a lot of people, a lot of my healers as well, who felt attacked, especially acutely in this last month. And there's many reasons for that. There's the protests that are going to be on the 20th. I read somewhere that actually in the satanic calendar, that it's a day where they are going to use it for energy harvesting. Well, what we're going to do in the protests on the 20th, there's going to be mass gathering. People are going to get, together, and this is an opportune moment for them to do this, and energy harvest people. But you have to, if you are savvy and if you are prepared and mentally prepared, you are kind of protecting yourself. And it's so important to do that, protect you. Look, we're in the public eye a lot, Charlie. we speak about this a lot, we're all susceptible to it, myself included. And I only know myself how the last 2 months have been. It's just been a bit of a yo-yo. And if you're not aware of this, you could be just going up and down all the time and not realizing that actually we are susceptible to what you referred to just now as the black magic. This has been the fundamental tools behind the cabal to use against humanity, to deceive, that mastery and deception, to fool us, to idolize the wrong people. And that's what they use. The weaponization of media has been their greatest tool, and the entertainment fraternity to use children, to brainwash children through idolizing celebrities who are not of the light, who are not carrying good energy. And this kind of hypnotizes, this hypnotic state that people get. So this defense mechanism that we're having at grassroots level, trying to convince people to say, look, this is what's going on. If they don't have that spiritual compass and what we're talking about in with regards to this, if they don't have that, there's going to be that much of an arduous task to explain it. So I've come to the conclusion now that, you can plant the seeds out there and talking about stuff like this, that it's not just what's going on in the geopolitical arena, it's actually behind the scenes in the spiritual realms. And to actually explain this better, forgive me, I can go off on a tangent. I'm very much aware of that, and I don't explain it very well. But, a lot of conversations you and I, Daryl, have really helped me to put things in perspective, which is why I wanted you, to sort of share more of that with us today.
Sure, yeah. It's all about curating psychic hygiene, essentially. We all know what mental and emotional well-being is, and our mental and emotional health, but psychic hygiene is what you are allowing into your aura, allowing into your mind, right? And taking care of that. My Instagram's just set up to remind people of this. I'm always reminding people that they are in control, they are in their power, to stop being distracted, to stop playing into the games, and to get people to focus a little bit more on where their attention goes. You started following me last year when I was posting a lot about this stuff, and I still do. But you see, we really have to understand what our energy is, what our spiritual energy is. We understand we have a body, right? We understand that we have emotions, but there's a connection between brain, mind and body, and that's what creates spirit, right? See, I talked about astrology earlier, and the astrology really does play a big part in the movements in consciousness. Astrology, even though not scientifically quantifiable, it's poetically justifiable, and the human mind operates on stories. And what does it need to operate on stories? It needs poetry. So astrology is a really powerful tool to look at the movements within consciousness and look at the energy. And the cabal, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, they look for planetary retrogrades. When a planet goes retrograde, it means that its power and its energy isn't guiding us anymore. So it means that, for instance, the planet Mercury, it goes retrograde 3 times a year. Now, Mercury is the planet for intellect, thinking, and communication, travel, all this kind of energy, and even conditions, electricity and electrical products and equipment. So I've noticed in recent years that the cabal or deep state will throw a false flag during a retrograde period, because that's when people are susceptible to their emotions being stirred, and it just messes everyone's vibration up. And so my Instagram's been set up as a reminder to help people understand what their vibration is, and how to keep it strong, right? How to keep the mind and the emotions strong, and the body strong. Because I think a lot of people on the spiritual path, they always talk about the law of attraction and manifesting, don't they? Everyone thinks, that they can manifest and attract things, and a lot of people do. But we really have to understand at a fundamental level that it's our vibration which creates reality, and we attract what we are, essentially. So if we're distracted, and a lot of people are distracted by the news and just believing, this narrative, and that it's all bad, they're in a lower vibration. So I've just been trying to remind people to raise a vibration by focusing on gratitude and focusing on, their blessings and what they can do in the world, right?
I think you've absolutely nailed it there. And it's something I've tried to allude to on this journey. You know, we very often, the minute we connect to our spiritual side, we start getting on our knees and praying for this and praying for that and praying for this and praying for that, rather than just saying thank you for what I actually have.
Yeah.
You know, I talking with my wife the other day, and you know her, Alpa. She's a wonderful person. And you said, and we were saying, you know, the one thing that money can't buy is your health. We're all blessed that she's healthy and I'm healthy and Justin's healthy. And there's plenty of millionaires and billionaires out there that have suffered ill health for whatever reasons. But sometimes we just need to be grateful that I know you've had many health issues yourself, Alpa. For those of us that have, my only health issue I ever have is a hangover.
I'd like to add to that, and thank you, Charlie. It has been a struggle this year because, you know, I've come out to speak about something that I never thought I would. I wasn't prepared for this. I felt so committed to the cause and enraged about what I learned with regards to the children, which was the ultimate motivating factor for me to like, oh my God, I'm not really strong on the geopolitical side of things, but I need to come out and scream about this with no agenda. There was nothing. And one of the things that I found very difficult was this ability to speak in public and do what I'm doing and keep my mind in a focused way, because having fibromyalgia and Hashimoto's thyroid, one of the things is cognitive impairment. And I found it really difficult sometimes. People can see I struggle a lot of the times when we're having these Zoom chats. And this is the first time I'm really properly talking about it. And I think we're going to be speaking to Dr. Young soon, aren't we, Charlie? About, you know, the pitfalls of having a condition like fibromyalgia. But that still doesn't stop me from doing what I'm doing, because we're in a time like no other. This is a historic moment, and this is a real fight. And somewhere I get divine intervention, and I feel very blessed. And going back to this whole thing about gratitude, it is that gratitude that, like, actually I have the inner tenacity, the inner strength, the inner resolve. Of course, I'm looking after myself. I'm doing what I need to do. And your health is so important. I only know too well how important it is to look after your mind, your body, and your soul. But it all comes in tandem. You need to spiritually look after yourself. I know so many people who exercise, eat really, really well, and they end up getting cancer. But why is that? There's the emotional connection, there's the spiritual connection. Everything works holistically. And it's so important. And I'm learning this in this journey. We're constantly evolving. We're spiritually evolving every single day. We don't have all the answers. Who was born with a manual for this, right? So, you know.
Well, I'm trying to create one.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was just saying I need that manual now, because, you know, my memory's not serving me very well these days.
Yeah. So, you know, I've thought about this. So a bit of background on me. I was a course manager for a private college in the UK. For 4 years in a row, I was grade 1 by Ofsted, and I had the most successful program out of 9 colleges in the country.
Wow.
For that private business. So I had a spiritual awakening in 2016, and I thought, well, I've got so much more to give. I've got so much more to teach. You know, I can't keep myself pigeonholed, you know, just creating these 2 programs for this private business. So Empath Education is set up to teach all of this stuff, right? To be that manual. Like I said earlier, the adult course, the reason why I had a really successful program for that private college is because I was teaching my students how their brain works, how their mind works, how to manage their emotions and mental well-being. And that's why they turned up and performed and got distinctions, right? So I'm taking everything I learned through my 20s as a young man, and I've just distilled it into a program. But the spiritual awakening course has even more depth psychology. Okay, so it's really grounded in depth psychology, because I think spirituality is quite mired with a lot of fickle materialism. You know, there's a lot of spiritual materialism, I've noticed. So I've designed a course to cut through all of that, to help people ground their psychology, you know, looking at what the greatest psychologists and philosophers who've had spiritual awakenings, what they have said.
Mm-hmm. It's so valuable what you're doing right now. It just makes me smile because about 10 years ago, I bumped into a brain surgeon whilst on holiday. He was in his 80s, and he shocked the living shit out of me by telling me that we still only know about 5% of how the brain works.
Yeah.
And he was a brain surgeon. And so the work that you're doing now is helping us understand a bit more about how our brain works, how our frequencies are. And the one thing that's become very, very clear in the last year is that the pharmaceutical companies don't really want us to know this sort of stuff.
No.
Because they can't make any money out of us having a bit of common sense.
No.
Yeah, they don't teach us anything about our diet and nutrition, do they? They just want us buying a product, buying a drug. You know, there's a massive opioid epidemic in America, and you know, a lot of people are addicted to these things because, you know, that they even have like TV commercials just selling all this stuff. But then even the TV commercials like have like a little bit at the end that says there's all these side effects. But you see, I've had experience taking you know, opiate painkillers, and they're very addictive. They are extremely addictive and moreish, right? So I think a lot of people, when they get on these drugs, even if it has even if they're healed to some degree, they continue just taking the prescription, right? Because doctors are just giving them out like candy.
Yeah. It's very interesting that the amount of doctors who are now coming out, and Alpa and I have talked to a few of them in the past that are coming out and saying that they've been educated the wrong way. You know, there's one particular doctor who's going, as they call it in America, I'm going to sue my med school because what they've been taught was completely inaccurate, and he's gone through an emotional roller coaster because he's found out that he's actually been part of the problem, killing people rather than making people better, and keeping people ill to make money for these companies that have trained him how to medicate, or what he thought was medicating, and he was not happy about that.
Well, if we put it in perspective, you sit there in front of a doctor, you've got about 6 to 12 minutes, and this is the experience I've had, and they're trying to tell you what's going on within your body with just by looking at you, looking at their computer screen. How are you supposed to gauge what's going on in an individual? You need to see what's going on within their gut. The gut is the second brain within our body. And it's so important that gut health is at an optimal level, so we function at a cognitive level, you know, properly. And I was at the doctor's just recently, and they just sort of didn't even look at me, and they just want to put you on medication. They said, right, well, you know, your thyroid levels are completely up the roof, and you're going to straight away be on levothyroxine. I mean, they don't test the acid levels within your gut, within the stomach, and yet we're still, you know, people within my sort of family are trusting the NHS when they just continue to give us, you know, crappy information. They're not there to help you, but yet we want to align ourselves with this vaccine that's had no tests, no, you know, nothing. And yet a doctor's sitting there with me for 6 minutes trying to tell me what's going on in my stomach with doing no tests. And I've been going privately at the moment, spending loads and loads of money to get to the bottom and the root cause of what's going on with me. And finally, thanks to Tiana, finally, you know, I'm getting some traction to actually realize what is causing what's going on within me. For 20 years, I've been dealing with this. And that's just that you're sitting there in front of a doctor trying to ascertain what's going on with you. So, you know, it's all flawed. The whole system's flawed. So doctors need to come out of their ego. And I think it's the fear-based situation there as well. Like, what will people think? And there's a doctor, I think it was Dr. Gold, who's been really brave. I've posted this on my social media platforms, and she's actually thoroughly explaining what's wrong with the medical system. And she was ousted and all sorts of things, but they're not taught correctly. And that's the fundamental problem. They're not taught about nutrition. They're not taught to, you know, tell you, like, eat well. The 5-a-day campaign. I mean, how pathetic is that?
Well, even though, you know, these professionals maybe getting suppressed at their level. You know, there's people like you talking about it, and you know, on my Instagram, I've spoken a little bit about my experience with this, and you know, the reason why people come into it, the problem of addiction, is because they have childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And doctors aren't taught this, you know, and that's actually the root of it. It's always childhood trauma, which is why people become addicted to alcohol or drugs or gambling or anything. And, you know, I've experienced this myself, which is why I believe I've had a spiritual awakening at this point in my life 5 years ago, to deal with that, you know, to deal with all of that trauma that was suppressed in me, and why I was, you know, behaving in ways which, you know, weren't conscious to me. You know, this is all unconscious behavior, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this is the catalyst, you know, and this your crisis becomes a blessing. Essentially, it becomes a tool where we are helping others from our own experience. And if you haven't experienced that dark night of the self, you haven't actually experienced, you know, what it feels like to be rock bottom. You know, we cannot then connect with others, you know, when we're going through these experiences. And I think you mentioned that in one of your modules in your course, about going through the dark night of the soul. But there's so much beauty in that if we choose to have the eyes to see it. You know, it becomes the tools for us in the future to actually heal. And that's
what I find is where we least want to look, you know, and it really is like, you know, at rock bottom, because everything's like so egotistical, isn't it? You know, everything in society, in Western society, it's all about the ego and what the ego wants, and about affirmation and aggrandizement. But see, when we remove all of that stuff, you know, and we really look within, you know, what's really within, we see all of our wounds and what we're not happy with, then it's through the process of looking at that stuff where we can actually, you know, bring healing to it, right? And remove shame and guilt and fear, essentially.
It's all part of a process of understanding how our brain works. And this is when you start to understand, rather than just be programmed to believe everything you're told and everything you see. Many years ago, I stopped believing everything I heard, and most of what I heard and saw, because I had to establish truth, and because I'd gone through my younger life, finding out that I was misled in so many things. And then when you start, the joy of when you start to find out truth, there's a peace that you find from within, because it makes sense. The truth makes sense. Whereas what we've lived through for the last 10, 20, 30, 50 years has been a lie. So none of it made any sense. So we've all been completely detached from reality. I made a point of it yesterday. It's one of my pet hates, is how people can go onto a program, a reality TV program, and then come out and call themselves a celebrity. And I've never understood why people in the north like watching Coronation Street and in the South East Enders and Liverpool Brookside and stuff like this. If you've got your own life, why would you want to watch somebody else's? I don't get it. I don't understand why people are so fascinated with other people's lives. If you have a life of your own, you don't need to be looking at other people's lives.
Well, it's avoidance, isn't it? It's avoidance of your own life. And I actually spoke to somebody about this. I said to them, why do you enjoy watching EastEnders and Coronation Street? And they said, because when they see someone else's life in a show like that, then they actually think, oh, my life isn't so bad, because a lot of those characters go through drama and have problems and stuff. So, you know, that was a weird psychology there, but someone actually said to me, it makes them feel that their life isn't so bad. But there's a comparison, isn't there? There's a comparison. And I think because a lot of people don't really look within themselves, they just want to observe out and study outwardly. And that's how they attain all of their information for what they perceive as reality, right?
Yeah. Seeing as Alpa's on here, I'm going to make a mention that I saw something so funny the other day in India. They've allowed the crowds in to watch the cricket. But when a cricketer hits the ball in for six and it goes into the crowd, they're all over each other, just like India should be. I mean, but when the ball comes back on the pitch, they kick it around to clean it on the grass before anybody will pick it up. It's like a hot potato. I mean, the programming from that, I was just like, really? Are you that stupid? I mean, oh, catching a cold off a cricket ball. Yeah, that's going to work, isn't it?
What we're living through.
It was just brilliantly funny. It was, you couldn't have mowed it up.
Look at what we're going through with this cancel culture at the moment, Mr. Potato Head.
Oh, I know, Dr. Seuss and all this.
And Dr. Seuss, and then you've got Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, sorry, gyrating at the Grammys. It's just all so flawed.
I remember the black woman coming on saying, because they were trying to get rid of the gollywog off Robinson's Jam, and she said, "Are you really saying I look like that? Is that what you're saying?" And this was a black woman saying, I don't get that.
Yeah.
But this cancel culture has been creeping in. I mentioned it about how nowadays in Hollywood, they don't have actresses anymore. It's female actors. And I'm just like, really? Well, I tell you what, if you want to have female actors, why don't we just have one category, best actor, and then see if you win anything on that one? Yeah. I mean, this is the stupidity of them all. You know, it's been an actor and an actress. Sorry?
It's all, at the moment, everything that's going on, in my view, it's optics. It's really exaggerated. Yeah. Everything that we have been breadcrumbed in the media is to allow people to think themselves, because we're seeing stuff with Hollywood actors, within the news, media, politicians, government, and at every single level. And why suddenly now? I mean, this is the great global awakening, but we have to let people to see for themselves. And those that are heavily programmed and that are still not seeing what's going on and still following the government, still believing everything, we can't help them. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. And ultimately with everything that's going on, it's so exaggerated, it's laughable. You're looking at the optics as what's going on in the US with the whole thing at the geopolitical level. I mean, it's obvious to us, but it's still not obvious to people at grassroots, and they're just thinking we're crazy about Trump potentially coming back in very soon. I mean, people are still laughing. The Alpa, just get over it now. Biden's in; he's in for the next 4 years. You guys are all deluded. This is like a cult. Just start thinking about something else. But we are living in some very interesting times at the moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of distraction out there. It's all distraction, isn't it, to keep us from coming into our own power and then aligning our own vibration, right? Because when we find our own power, we find truth within ourselves, and we find some truth and align with some truth out there, we actually raise the vibration. But just to go to the point, you mentioned that Trump might be coming back soon. I've heard a little bit about this. I've heard the plan is that Biden is going to be removed and Kamala is going to come in, but as soon as she comes in, the Patriots are going to impeach her. There's a majority on the Senate or something like that. Charlie, do you know anything about that?
I've been told there's going to be a roller coaster of madness in March.
Well, it is.
Yeah, but I also believe that it will be a bumpy road. Yes, for sure. I mean, what's happening right now, how on earth the people who voted for Biden can sit back and go, yeah, that's the man I voted for, I'm happy with him.
Well, they're not happy, are they?
No,
a lot of them are saying, I can't believe I voted for this man.
No. And Kamala Harris is no better than he is. This is all a process this is part of the pantomime to expose everything.
Yeah.
The time frame of it, I don't know. I just know that from what I understand, the beginning of April will be very, very important for the optics of what's actually happening. We'll just go through a madness that we're going through right now. We are hours away from the new financial system, the quantum system, not the new world order system. That's been completely smashed to the wall, and so is all their rubbish with it. So those days are long gone, and there's certain things that are being done right now to make sure that they never get refinanced again, and also that the tunnels never get reused again. They're still emptying out underneath the White House. There was a lot more under there than they ever imagined. it's pretty disgusting, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that will creep out. For those of us that are wide awake, you can see it so clearly. You know, for those of us that are English, seeing Oprah Winfrey, it was nothing more than Ian Wright in a wig. It looked nothing like her.
I think we're entering a higher timeline now, where all of the everything is being exposed, and we're actually starting to see some results. And I'd just like to refer to a Q post from November 11th, 2019. Q said, "Project Looking Glass, ?
Correct.
Going forward in order to look back, Q."
Correct.
Now, I've looked into this and about our timelines. Ricky, in your last podcast you guys did together, said about you know, this crown virus isn't affecting his timeline. He chooses not to be in their timeline. So what I think Q are doing, they're helping us to ascend to a higher vibrational timeline by giving us information. So just a little bit about Project Looking Glass. Bob Lazar was a physicist from Los Alamos. He worked in Area 51, so he claims, in the 80s. And I looked at this interview with Bob Lazar, and he mentioned Project Looking Glass, and he said that in the area of S4, the facility in Area 51, they had some technology where they were distorting the space and time axis and gravity to open up portals. They were creating a gravitational lens to view into the past and the future. Now, there was another guy called Preston Nichols who wrote a book called Montauk. He was involved in a classified project. His book was released in 1992, but he said from 1971 to 1983, he was involved in a project where there were bizarre military experiments, and some of the experiments involved humans being trained to use extraterrestrial technology, such as a chair that increased psychic ability. And again, he says they were opening portals to look into the future. So I think Q and the White Hats and the Patriots are using the same technology, and they're telling us the story backwards, right? But they're trying to align the collective energy, the collective vibration to a higher timeline, so that we can match that future, right? Because I think there are multiple dimensions, multiple.
You're absolutely bang on right, because there are so many times, not just once or twice, so many times where the Q posts have been posted years before.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we look at Q posts from 2 to 3 years ago, which is telling us something that's happening today, right? So
correct. And things happen exactly on that day.
Yeah.
I think one of the well, when you talk about these sort of things, it takes me back to April or May of last year, where I was asking a question about a specific subject, and they said to me very clearly, if this happens, Trump will mention your son's name in his speech. This was back in May last year, April, May. And he walks out with some papers in his hand, and he says, "We have the employment figures just in." And Justin is my youngest son's name. And that shook me to my roots, just as he said it. And I wasn't expecting it. I was thinking about Lee or Glenn, my other sons. That was my thought. I wonder how he'd fit those names in. I didn't even think about Justin, because it's not the sort of name that you could fit into a conversation, or I didn't think. And then suddenly it came back, and I just sat back and went, wow. And I got a little wink emoji from the person who told me.
Wow.
So those sort of things, and this is where I try and point out what truth is to people. Truth is everything that's happened up until now. What happens this afternoon and tomorrow is all conjecture.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a saying as well, Charlie, that nothing is true, everything is permitted.
Yeah.
So everything comes from some source, but
sure,
we're not quite sure.
Well, it's a fascinating conversation, and this has been a great start to the day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed talking to both Alpa and Daryl. Thank you, Daryl, for sharing that. Thank you for getting up early, Alpa.
I'm up early every day, Charlie.
I know. But no, been an absolute pleasure and a privilege, and we'll do it again very, very soon. Cheers, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
And also, just so you know, the link for Daryl's stuff, his Instagram and his courses and all of that is down below.
Thanks,
Thank
Charlie.
you very much.
Thank you.